Okay, I think we're good. Well, good morning and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Holcomb. I'm the executive director of the State Charter Schools Commission, and I'm happy to be one of the hosts of this webinar today. Now that we have all found ourselves for the rest of the year sort of in this virtual online learning space that most of us are unfamiliar with, we thought that it would be helpful to all schools, not just state charter schools or charter schools, but all schools all over the state and beyond, to benefit from those who are experts in this space who have been doing this work for a long time. And we are fortunate to have two online charter schools in our portfolio, Georgia Connections Academy and Georgia Cyber Academy, and they have very graciously offered to share their wisdom and expertise with us. So we are so appreciative of that and thankful. So we just wanted to offer this opportunity to all of our schools, all schools across the state to benefit from that. Today we have the Connections Academy here with us. They're leading a webinar. Thankful to everybody who was able to join this morning. I know there's lots of resources and lots of guidance that's coming out, and it's like a webinar party this week. I feel like there's webinar every hour and sometimes multiple webinars. So this will be recorded, and you are certainly welcome to share the recording later. We'll share it with everybody who joined today. We'll put it on our website and share it through other outlets, social media outlets later on, so you can share it with your colleagues. But I'm going to turn it over in a second to Maria Sherritt and Sabina Claster, who are the special education team at Georgia Connections Academy. And then we also have Brasilia Bilal Page, who is the executive director here at Connections, and she can answer any questions for you. Before I do that, I think Michelle Neely, who's the president of our agency foundation, and Michelle and I kind of put this together ourselves, just to hope that it can benefit folks. So Michelle, anything you want to add?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Michelle Neely. I am the fairly new president of the State Charter Schools Foundation. And for those of you who I haven't met, I look forward to meeting you either virtually now or in person later. Just a couple notes from the foundation. All schools received an email from me with a link to a survey to let us know about about your situation with distance learning and your students' needs. If you haven't completed that yet, if you can complete that this morning or by the end of the day today, we would really appreciate it. Lauren and I are working with a number of different organizations throughout the state to ensure that we find resources for all the students to be able to connect to distance learning opportunities. And we're finding that some of the data for state charter schools is not available. We want to make sure we have good, accurate data so that when we go to funders and we talk to Godot and others, that the needs of all of our state charter school students are being met and considered. So it's very important. If you don't have exact numbers, that's okay. Just do your best. The foundation is working on funding for electronic devices and internet access and some other things that I hope to be able to talk to you about more next week. If you have specific needs, please feel free to reach out to me by email or phone, and I am happy to help you. I have made connections with a lot of different service providers, and I'm very happy to help make those connections for you. So I hope that we'll have some news for you next week. Thank you.
Sure. And then one other note just on that, Michelle is working to ensure that state charter school needs are met, but there are a lot of folks at DOE and other organizations that are working for the more broad school community. So there may be some folks who are from traditional schools and school districts who are welcome, and we're so glad that you're here. If you need resources at your school to ensure that students continue to be served virtually or through distance learning right now, please reach out to DOE, reach out to us. And, there's a lot of folks working, and we're trying to put all the pieces together to just ensure that learning can continue, because that's what all of our goals are right now. Just because school is closed doesn't mean that learning has to stop. And we know you are all working hard to put the pieces together, and we want to be a support for you. So one housekeeping note, we have everybody muted to reduce feedback. So if you have a question, questions are welcome. Please type them into the chat box, and we will be monitoring that. We can either unmute you for your question, or we can just read your question to the Connections team here. And with that, I will hand it over to the Connections folks. Thank y'all so much again for hosting this. We're so glad to do this and just benefit from your wisdom.
Thank you, Lauren. I would like to introduce, I'm Brasilia Page. I'm the Executive Director of Georgia Connections Academy. We have Maria Sherrod, our Director of Special Education at Georgia Connections Academy, and Sabina Claster, our Assistant Director of Special Education. I'm going to turn it over to these ladies. They worked really hard to put this presentation together, and they are truly subject matter experts. Thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you all. Brasilia, she introduced us, and we're thankful for this opportunity. We know even yesterday was just a tough day to hear the news that, the doors will be shut the remainder of the school year, but what a wonderful opportunity for us to take some time to show you some of the things that we've been doing. Georgia Connections Academy has been open for about 10 years, and I came from a brick and mortar setting, so I'm very familiar with the transition, and my sweet children are still in the brick and mortar setting. So I'm watching it unfold on both ends. So I wanted, to make sure that you all knew that. I'm Maria Sherrod, the Director of Special Education, and Miss Sabina Claster is my Assistant Director. And I do want to make a note. We are our own LEA. We are a virtual public charter school, and we have put together our program in collaboration with many of our friends at the Georgia DOE. We use GoIEP. We have constant communication with them, and we're going to give you some ideas, some tips, some tricks, and show you what we're doing. But again, your district, your board, your superintendents are the ones making those big decisions, and we hope that you find this useful. All right, next slide. So we want to start with one of the most important things that everybody in the special education world is very familiar with. It comes up a lot in communication about students with disabilities providing services, and I see a lot of these questions coming through on different platforms that I'm on, and even from parents of students and friends about your awareness of your district policies around PII, so personal identifiable information. Understanding what your policies are in your district and how you can implement those. If this isn't something that is constantly communicated as a district, this is a great time to start. We go through this with our entire team at the beginning of the year, every year. Especially in our new teachers, they go through an intense training about personal identifiers and how to protect student information. And one thing we want to make a note is this goes for email, it goes for any communication you're having with a family. But as you can see, we're on camera today, and many of the classrooms that you're starting to see unfold and that our teachers are working in Zoom or Google Classroom or Google Hangouts or Adobe. For us, it's Adobe. We are using cameras now, and we want to make sure that you all know we have FERPA policies, PII, that we've communicated with our families. But when we have our cameras on and our students are on our camera, the PII only comes into play when you're identifying students' differences or accommodations. So if you're in a classroom, you're having a Google class, you're having a Zoom Hangout, these students are in the classroom just as they would be in a brick and mortar. So make sure there's just very specific training around that, and that your teachers are very clear about how to communicate, when to communicate, what's the right way in working with their students with disabilities when they are in this new virtual platform, and knowing what those identifiers are. Okay, we also have LinkedIn, and it's in our presentation, but we're going to provide some things to you at the end of this presentation. We've linked in a resource document. We've gotten a lot of great information from the CEC, OSEP, some Zoom etiquette, Zoom information, U.S. Department of Ed, Georgia Department of Ed, that linked into one document so that we can share those resources. The CEC just I think it was last night, sent out a great document on understanding the virtual environment and how to really create that environment as a teacher or as a leader in serving your students. So again, PII, you need to know that this goes for email. It goes for if you're using Google, Hangouts, any type of communication. Many times we have student IDs that we use when we're communicating, or first name, last initial, last name, first initial. You have to be very careful with the way that you're communicating. And that's an identifier, but whatever your school is using as a student ID to keep that and protect the information. One thing that you'll see if you've ever worked with Georgia Connections or Georgia Cyber Academy is we may send documents through DocuSign, which is a protected platform, or you may get an encrypted email with the document. It's password protected. And you will get that email with the document that's password protected, and then in a completely separate email, a password would be sent with no indication that you're sending the password. But what we'll communicate sometimes is we're going to send you an email. You'll have the document there. It'll be password protected, and we want to let you know an immediate follow-up email will be coming to you with that password. Okay, and that's a great way to protect a document if you're sending one to a family. And one thing we're going to talk about later is IEP meetings. Any type of meeting you're having, and then the follow-up documentation, getting that out to the families and to the providers if they're attending, or to the gen ed and special ed for signature. We're very fortunate where we do use that DocuSign that is a protected platform, but if not, there are other ways you can do that. All right. Now, the next part we want to talk about is scheduling. Right now, and like I said, I'm very fortunate to see it unfold across the board. My kids are in a brick and mortar, and my mom is a teacher in Gwinnett County, and my sister is also a teacher, and so are some of my dear friends. And really, the most important thing we found in our environment is creating a time to plan and schedule. There's no longer that synchronous contact that you're having with the students or with your teacher friends. You know, you could be having that planning where you all go to that classroom and you work together before school, after school, or during your planning period. And it's a different shift of thinking. So scheduling that time, giving the teachers an opportunity to schedule time to plan together, to come together and work to not only create lessons and create this new type of learning for their students, but also, I'm just going to kind of talk about it from a student standpoint. Your teachers, or you, are used to seeing your student. For me, it was 50 minutes. My physics class, I saw them 50 minutes every single day. And I was able to synchronously assess them. There were different things I could do just in person that it came natural to me as an educator. And that opportunity is different in our environment. So you are not only planning, but you're also taking the work that the students are doing. Maybe they're doing it through Google Form. Maybe they're doing their work in a Google Slides that they're submitting in Google Classroom. There's many different platforms, and we know districts are all doing it differently, but allowing that time for the teachers to come together and look at this assessment that Timmy did and see where his weaknesses are. And Sabina is going to talk a little bit later about taking that information and what you can do with it when you do have that synchronous contact with that student. Some things that I have seen, and just some ideas for you from different brick and mortar settings. And for us, you'll see in the next slide, we have actually allotted an entire day to give our teachers an opportunity to come together. We have our district meetings during this time. We have many different opportunity, learning team, whatever we need to allow our teachers to plan and collaborate and prepare for their next lesson, or prepare for providing the accommodations for this new student who was just found eligible. This is just a sample of one of our schedules, our middle school, and you can see there are scheduled times and it says English, all teachers. That is a co-taught time where we have two teachers, or collaborative. Also, that's another way to co-taught or collaborative time where you've got the two teachers in that live lesson. Then we've got, and let me backtrack, I'm using live lesson. So we use Adobe Connect, and live lesson is our format that we're able to provide services, and we provide instruction through that format. So you can see here, we have it where we've got certain days that where the curriculum is being introduced to the students, and then we have small group times incorporated into our schedule. We also have a study hall time, and this has been fabulous for our team. So we have students that may say, they come to us with a doctor's excuse, we were unable to attend our small group math live lesson. We have some questions. Then we, every day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we allow an opportunity for study hall time. So not only are we giving the teachers time to plan and schedule, we're giving the students different opportunities, multiple opportunities to make it to a live lesson to receive that service. Okay, and again, Sabina's going to go into detail about planning. I've also seen another district as well that has taken on a similar schedule where they've given 1 day a week for each level of their school, 1 day a week where it allows the students to get caught up, and it also allows for the students, the teachers, to plan. So at that time, the instruction, whatever they're providing for, if it's Google Classroom for that instruction, they are allowing for, it's great for students who need extended time, gives them that time to catch up. They can contact the teacher, they can work with their families, but it's also giving that 1 day for that level of school to really plan and look at where the deficits may be in the work that's being turned in. Okay, next slide. So now I'm going to hand over the mic to Sabina Claster, and we're kind of taking a co-taught approach right now, as you can see. And one thing I do want to note is you see our cameras on, and she's going to talk a little bit about this later. We find it important and powerful to use your cameras. I was just in a presentation with the CEC, and typically many webinars that come our way, it's just a slideshow, and the CEC, great webinar, and we were able to see Julie Weatherly on webcam. We were able to see the CEC representative, or Case, the Case director. All of these women and men were on camera, and it was so powerful. So I'm going to mute my mic and hand it over to Sabina for a few slides.
Thank you, Maria. So what you see on this slide, expectations, best practices, is just for online math instruction. It's because I am supervising our math teachers, 5th grade to 12th, and we put out these expectations, but they really are good best practices for any kind of online instruction. First of all, a little bit about me. I'm finishing my 8th year now with Georgia Connections Academy, so I do have quite some years of experience, and everything that you see here, it really is something that has been, those experiences have been accumulated over the years. So it is some things that we kind of found work, some other things we need to watch out for that don't work, and this is what we're trying to, this information to provide to you. I have been teaching. I was teaching 5 years with Georgia Connections Academy in the math, high school math functions. Any examples that you may see maybe from that particular subject, but again, this is something that you can really apply to any grade. You can get those ideas and modify them, and to see how creative you can get with your particular subject or with the teachers that you may supervise. The first point that we have here is the teacher on camera, and Maria has already touched upon that. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that the students can see you, the teacher, when you have instruction. In this particular slide right here, it is for the synchronous instruction. We have some other information later for asynchronous instruction,
But for the time that you're in the synchronous classroom, when you have live interaction with your students, it's important that you are on the camera the whole time. Now, we know that we want to have our students have interaction as well and have their cameras on and have that social experience, especially nowadays with students not being used to being isolated. It's important that they have the opportunity to also have that time together, see each other, catch up. Once instruction starts, you know, the students' cameras, it's best practices from what we've experienced, it's best practices for the cameras to be not showing for the kids and really focus on the instruction, but the teacher should always have that. Now, the reason for the teachers having the camera on, it's important that the students see and make that connection. A lot of times, and if you can just put yourself in a position of a child, when you are hearing instruction about a subject that you may not necessarily be interested in, or you really don't want to, you know, learn about, math. But even though if it's something that interests the kids, it's hard for them to focus. And it's just a very different platform right now where they need to learn from. And if they only hear it, and even if they see pictures or slides, if they cannot make that connection with the teacher actually talking, where they can focus on as the teacher speaks, it makes a world of a difference. It is so easy for students to just tune out, right? And get sidetracked and get distracted. So that is one important thing. First, the students have that connection with the teacher, but also that they have a point of contact, a point of focus as they're learning the instruction. One other thing that we always tell our students is that they provide some materials ahead of time before instruction, especially for when we talk about students with disabilities. We like to provide them with a heads up. Hey, this is what we're going to cover. This is kind of what you're going to see. These are vocabulary that we're going to use, and kind of get them a head start on the material. We also may provide them with guided notes. We may provide them with graphic organizers. We may also send them a short video clip about something that's a prerequisite that they may need to know before they're able to learn that new objective. Some of our teachers even started having their small group sessions right before the co-taught session, just to give our kids that do need that extra exposure and that extra instruction, to give them, again, that heads up and that head start on familiarizing themselves with the material, with the new objective, with the vocabulary, and so they're able to follow much better once they're in the co-taught setting. When you start your session, when you've done socializing, you start the session of instruction, you always want to have some sort of open activity that introduces that new material that you're going to teach. You want to know, for example, do the kids know that prior knowledge that they need? And again, I'm speaking from our math experience, where that's crucial, that they have those foundational skills of prior knowledge in order to even comprehend or be able to follow that new instruction. And based on those, you know, assessments that you do at the very beginning, that's just very short, you know, 3-4 minutes, 1 or 2 questions where you kind of gauge where the kids are. And based on that, it may even direct you which direction to go during instruction. In a co-taught environment, you know, how are you going to divide up? Maybe you have some lower functioning students. Again, they're hybrid groups. They're gen ed and special ed population students that may be lower functioning. They may need something different than what those that are higher functioning or that are ready to pursue new things. So again, it is important to have some sort of assessment in the very beginning. There are different tools that you can use in our Adobe Connect live lesson. We have different things that we can use, like a poll pod. I know Zoom uses poll pods. If you have a subscription with Zoom, whatever platform you use, you'll be able to kind of assess where they're at and that should guide how you're going to have that instruction. Again, I already talked about removing the video pods for the students, except for the teacher. But also, you want to consider removing your chat pod, because if you're in a group of, let's say, 30 kids, there may be some more chatting going on that is not related to instruction. And again, if you're in this type of environment, if you're paying attention to one thing, you cannot pay attention to the other, right? So it is easier for students to kind of talk to each other, which in the classroom, you don't want that during instruction. So that would be probably be helpful. What we also do, we want to provide a Q&A pod, which is kind of like a private chat with the teacher, so that our students have the ability to ask questions in private that not the other students see. And we also use that for when we ask questions for them to answer. So the students don't see others' answers, and they can provide their own answer. Definitely vocabulary, not only math vocabulary. We always want to pay attention and spend some time on what vocabulary you're using, like in science as well. We want to make sure that we provide them with assistance on what the vocabulary means, and maybe have something within the live lesson that shows the vocabulary so they can continuously refer to. I mentioned again, you want to differentiate your instruction based on the results of that opening activity. Use probing and guided questions to let students discover learning objectives. It's easy for an online instruction for teachers to start getting into the presentation mode, right? But you want to have interaction with the students. You want to keep them engaged. You want to ask them open-ended questions. You want them to be part of discovering that learning objective. You want to teach strategies and tools that you're using within the live lesson, within the instruction. You want to make sure that you teach or provide explicit instruction how to use them when they're working independently, because now your students will be doing a lot of work independently where you are not right there. So you want to make sure you teach them how to use those tools or how to use those strategies when they're doing their homework. You want to use an exit ticket at the end. You want to kind of gauge, where are the students? Have they learned it? Do they need something that as a follow-up? Because now you want to, based on the instruction, you want to decide what do the students need now that they're not in that live instruction, but they need to do their own work and do some more learning and practicing. What do they need from you, and how do you follow up with that? In our best practices, we always incorporate benchmark and state testing in our conversations to make it something that is normal and nothing to be afraid of. And you want to use different presentation tools. You want to engage those students. You want to make sure that they participate. And so there's a lot of programs out there that you can use where you can have some games in order to lighten up the instruction. They can't sit and listen this whole time. You want to kind of use little chunks of time to have instruction and make sure that you have interaction with the students. And then you may take a few minutes to say, okay, everybody stand up and stretch, and kind of break it up a little bit so that they have that break in between. So, like Maria said, a big portion of online teaching is the planning. Because when you are in the synchronous instruction, you have a limited amount of time, and you want to make sure that you use that the most effective way. In special education, the planning is essential because we need to make sure that we serve our students and provide that specially designed instruction. You cannot do specialized instruction without planning, right? So what we're using, and I got this template and I modified a little bit. I got it from Marilyn Friend, who's a well-known educator in regards to co-teaching. And our gen ed and special ed teacher, our co-teachers come together to have a scheduled time to plan every week. And they go through, okay, what is it that we're going to teach? The gen ed teacher says, this is the standard, this is what we need to cover. And they're going through those details, like what is it that the students need to know prior to be able to learn this objective? And what are some of the hurdles, what are some of those difficulties that you as the general ed content expert that you see is usually happening? And then the special ed teacher can take that information and apply it to knowing, first of all, who those students are that the teacher is teaching. Who are they? What kind of weaknesses and needs do they have? And here in this example is, for example, it's a math lesson, an algebra math lesson. And they were talking about slope, definition of slope and all that. And it was all planned out, what kind of lesson activities they were going to have. And then we have to consider this group of students, for example, there were several weaknesses that are represented. And we know that the general population may also have those weaknesses in a group of kids. Specifically, executive functioning weaknesses, short-term memory weaknesses, low processing speed. You know, for example, in this group of kids, we did not have to consider, for example, a visually impaired, which we do serve students that are visually impaired. We have all eligibilities represented in our student body. In this particular group, those are the 3 areas that our special ed teacher needed to kind of consider. And within planning the instruction, what kind of different approaches or what kind of supports the students need in order to learn this objective. Some of the strategies this teacher was using is obviously provide extra time for answers. That's another reason you don't want to use the chat pod to ask and request answers, because you know, when you have 30 kids and let's say 20 are really, you know, they know what they're doing and it goes boom, 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 boom. I mean, they're just answering questions, and it really creates a barrier for those students who have more difficulties with answering or need more time, that are still processing the question, what is being asked, and then having to think about, so where do I get the information to solve this problem or to answer this question? It takes much more time. So that's one of the reasons we're using those private question and answers pods. And again, depending on the platform that you're using, you can use different things. I know Zoom has a private chat as well, and it's something that you want to investigate. So that's what we're using for that. And then we want to, this particular teacher also kept the slope definitions visible throughout the session, so students that have those memory issues, they can refer back to what that means as they're working through the problem. They're using colors when counting rise over run. He wrote down the steps when graphing a line using slope and intercept, so really very concise, just this, first this, then this, then this, right? So helping those students, especially when you do independent practice, you don't know, are they working on it? Do they know what to do? Do they even know how to start, right? So we want to provide those kind of supports, and also provide these materials prior to the lesson and find any math terms. So that was the kind of plan for this lesson, and I'm going to show you what that looked like during the lesson. I have some screenshots. So here is our, again, we're using Adobe Connect for our platform, and we have our co-teachers here. Obviously, for privacy purposes, we have our user, our students' names are replaced. And you see here where they have this demonstration, they have a whiteboard where they show the graph, they're using colors, and down here is where we have a private question and answer pod. So they can answer here and only the teachers can see it. And then here is where, for example, they demonstrated how to use the Desmos calculator because in the EOC, they're going to be using that. So when the teachers put in the link in there for the students to follow along, to also access the calculator so they can work with the teachers as the teacher demonstrated. Here's where he had a notes pot where he put in those questions or those steps on what they were asked to do. And with this Q&A pod, and you can't see that here because that's a student view. I got the screenshot from recording, so it's a student view, but the teacher view lets you also ask a question to a specific student in private. So that question will pop up on the student's screen. And when somebody is not providing an answer or it's taking very long, the teacher can reach out. So that is what our special ed teacher will do, reach out to those students that need extra help and trying to get them started, find out what is it that they need in order to work out this problem and even to get started, right? And then what is the next step? So they're providing that specific support.
So I want to make a note. We have a lot of information, so we're going to kind of go through these next few slides, and we're going to provide this PowerPoint to you as well. And we're going to Sabine, we're going to have to go through these pretty quickly because we do have a hard stop at 10, and we want to leave some time for some questions.
Okay. So this is just a consideration when you use games. Like Kahoot is a great game, everybody loves it. But it is a competition that, you know, students that have a difficult time, first of all, with reading or with understanding, comprehension, and then with timing. They just, you know, there's a wall. They can't think when there's timing involved. So it really is a competition between the best students, and they're always being listed. It creates a barrier for those students who are having difficulties with this. So some of the things that you can do is you can send the questions in advance to your students. You're not giving them the answers, but you give them the questions in advance so that they can, you know, they know what to expect. You want to give as much time as possible. You don't ever want to say, you know, 30 seconds. You always want to read the question. Don't just have it on the screen. Read it out loud for them, and consider blind Kahoot, where you don't list the students' scores and things like that. So that is just, you know, caution to those kind of things. They're great for the general population, but we don't want to leave other students behind. Some other ways that we serve our students, obviously, is in outside of instruction, because we only see them for a limited time where we provide synchronous instruction, but the learning goes on all week long. Our platform or our way of teaching and learning is kind of like a flipped classroom on steroids, right? They're doing independent learning based on their lesson plan, and the teacher, the special teacher, does need to provide accommodation throughout. Some of the examples we have here is when we need to clarify instructions. For example, with this, the way the question is phrased sometimes gets confusing for students. So we want to paraphrase. Instead of how many books did Billy read by Tuesday, that may be difficult to understand. How many books did Billy read on Monday and Tuesday and off? So we want to paraphrase and clarify those confusing questions. Another example is our kids are having a difficult time when there's a lot of instructions, when they have to read a lot on one page. So break it down. Have just very concise and very short instruction and break it down for them and to the just very necessary steps. We also provide them with graphic organizers. We provide them with guided notes. Those are the type of things that they may need outside of the classroom in order to, you know, do that extra practice. And you can scaffold it depending on what the need of the student is, how many, you know, how much of support you're going to give them. Some tips for supporting parents is, you know, because now you have parents that are at home with their kids and they're not used to it. It may be a difficult situation, especially if they also have to work or they have siblings. it is a hard environment. And so we want to also provide some support to the parents. Obviously, you want to have a distraction-free environment for the student. You want to, for those students that are that resist the learning, or that don't want to do schoolwork, or it's difficult for parents to really sometimes deal with the behavior part that comes with it. So some tips that we give is set realistic goals for the day. Make a checklist for the child to check off. You want to give frequent breaks. So this is the one positive thing, is that there is some flexibility during the day, so that you can give your child a break in between, let them run outside and then come back and do some more work. And have your child work on difficult subjects first, while they're still fresh and they're not sick of learning and tired. You want to give small rewards in short intervals. You don't want to say, if you finish all of your work at the end, this is what you get to do, or this is what you get. You want to do rewards in small increments. You can use a timer, not to time them how fast they are, but to let them know, okay, now 20 minutes, I want you to focus and work on this. And then we'll take a 5-minute stretching break, for example. Write down triggers of outbursts so that you can consult with the teacher. So the parents should kind of monitor and write down so that they can talk to you as a teacher about how to deal with it. Have your child work during hours that are available for support. So you want to make sure as a parent that you're available if the child needs you during that time. And have your child work during hours that are most productive for him or her. Again, that's that flexibility. And I know I'm racing through this right now. Progress monitoring. We have a system in place where the case manager we have a shared Google Doc with the IEP goals. Teachers go in and they document the progress on those goals. And this is kind of what it looks like. It's a Google Sheet, and they have the goals, and they put in the notes of the progress as they learn and as they work with the students on those goals. Here's some tips and tricks. Again, we have already mentioned most of those. It's important that you provide a lot of visuals and you can provide them in advance. You want to assess them, because then now your focus will be not the whole class at that moment. You want to focus on those things that these students need, and they may have different needs. So you could, for example, break out your hour instruction in 30 minutes in 2 groups. 30 minutes for this group because they have a different need, and 30 minutes for this group because they have another need. And so you can more individualize the instruction and provide them with that support that they all need. Behavior, you want to have rules. You want to keep them engaged. We've mentioned most of that, and again, that PowerPoint will be available to you as well. And I'll hand it over to Maria. You're muted.
We can't hear you, Maria. Mm-mm.
Ma'am.
It shows that you're up on mine. You're not muted on my control panel. I'll ask a question while we try to figure that out. You may want to switch your audio if you go on the control panel, or I think she's joining again. But Sabina, maybe you could answer a question real fast that I have is, do y'all have any advice for families who, I know a lot of your teachers are now managing the learning of their children at home because their schools are closed. A lot of families are in that situation where everyone's at home trying to juggle their work responsibilities and student learning responsibilities. Have y'all made any adjustments, or do you have any guidance for schools on that?
Yes, so if what we've told our teachers is, what we told our teachers was, we understand obviously the situation they're in. We're trying to have the least interrupted time with the students when we're in instruction, and but knowing that people understand that there may be a child walking by. But we also gave them the flexibility to change their instructional time to a time where maybe their spouse is able to watch the children. And so we provided them with some flexibility in regards to when they hold their lesson, if they can schedule it at a time that's easier for them. We also told our teachers to own all students. So we have several 8th grade math teachers, then maybe keep them all, put all of the 8th grade together and rotate to make it, you know, easier, more realistic for our teachers to provide that instruction, kind of rotate teachers different days or different times. So kind of everybody share those students.
Okay, thank you. Maria, we were talking about juggling, you know, everyone's juggling so many responsibilities now with schools closed. So just any tips on that?
Yes, we are. And, you know, I just, my heart goes out to everybody. I'm one of those with 3 sweet little children, and I love them dearly. All right, so so I am going to fly through some of this information, and this is probably how we all feel right now. We're rushing to provide information, but we are going to give you all of this information. So we do have a great GAA population and teachers that provide instructions. Some of the platforms that we use are listed below. The TeachTown, DT Trainer, Unique, News to You. Many people use these in the brick and mortar as well. But these are supplemental and along with the curriculum that we've built. So let's go to the next slide. With this, some of the tips and tricks Sabina shared before are the same, go along with the same with our GAA, our alternately assessed students. Okay, and these are listed for you, but make sure you have that visual contact with those students. And on the next slide, you can see we've created during this presentation that the teacher did. She had all of her students in live lesson on camera. She had a video clip. She paused the video clip and she talked about living and non-living things just in this specific thing. And then she had the students show their living and non-living objects that they had at their home. So we are providing that synchronous contact and asynchronous, and again, having those parents there involved as much as you can. There's some really cool ideas out there with if you're teaching them daily living skills, you know, you create QR codes to go around the house that do little video clips of showing maybe how you cook or clean. That is, you know, a lot of schools are already doing that, again, brick and mortar, that kids can take home. So just some ideas, we'll provide these to you. Let's go to the next slide. Assistive technology. Zelphine Smith-Dixon, she is amazing, our Director of Special Education. She sent out an email blast a little bit ago about Tools for Life. This is huge. If you haven't heard of it, not familiar with it, and you receive her emails, go find this and look at the resources. The Read to Write is amazing. It will actually cover, it does all the cover overlays for your VI students. It'll read aloud. There's a writing option where the student can talk to text, and it is free. Right now, it's free to all students with disabilities. They're also offering it free to all students for districts. But the program, the Tools for Life, the contract that they have, they'll also provide training to the parents and to the schools. So it'll take web pages, anything that you're providing the student, and it'll cover, and you can just see that one sentence for the student to focus on for reading. Great tools. So look up Tools for Life email from Zelphine. These are some resources. We actually created a folder, and it provides for all of our teachers, but we can also send those to you as well if you may not be able to find it. This slide shows some additional reading supports. And again, Read and Write is on there again. I am a huge advocate for this Read and Write program, spokesperson. I wish I could be, but it is fabulous. And this was provided to us by Paula Gumpman, again with the Georgia DOE, some free assistive technology Google apps. Here's some reading supports, and the next one are some writing supports. There's a Quate IO, I believe is what it's called, is the other assistive technology for math. You know, one of the terms they used was, when we thought about assistive technology, we math behind, and this is the way to get it caught up. It'll serve all those read alouds and different things that are written into the IEP, the accommodations. So next is IEP meetings. I know this is across the state, people are doing things differently. However, you know, we have gone through with the guidance from the Georgia DOE, U.S. Department of Ed, and we have continued, which we will. It's much easier for us. We've already done this in the virtual environment. So we wanted to give you our tips and tricks and continue with our meetings. The only place where we are in a similar boat is obviously the psychological testing. So for IEP meetings, schedule, we use a shared calendar. So we use the Google Calendar. I'm not sure, you know, you all can use something different, but within this, you invite all the attendees, provide the phone conference. You may be using Zoom if your district has allowed that, or Google Meet platform, but you schedule this in Google Meet. What we've done, or for us, we use Adobe. We pick up the phone, or you can use Google Hangouts and call into the meeting and then share your screen. So our teachers or compliance managers, we have split roles at our school where we have special education teachers who are teaching and compliance managers who are managing compliance. They will share their screen. And what they've done is before the IEP meeting, they've sent a draft, a protected draft to the family so that they have a copy. And then we invite them into our Adobe Classroom. For you, it could be Zoom, it could be Google, whatever your district has decided and approved. We share the screen and we go through the IEP together. Okay, before the meeting, the teachers have sent out a teacher input form, a parent input form. We use Google for that, and we create the invite and go IEP, and we send that to the parents, and then we use DocuSign. DocuSign is a great resource if you're able to use that platform, because again, we send anything that needs signature through DocuSign. At the end of the IEP meeting, it will actually send that document, or re-eval, whatever meeting we're having, it'll send that document to all participants to sign, and then everybody gets a final copy of that DocuSign document. Okay, and those were just some tips and tricks. Again, we'll provide this to you. And this is how our procedure we've put together that we've shared with our staff on the steps and scheduling, you know, with the amount of time you need to plan ahead of time. And then again, DocuSign, you can tell I really am passionate about this, because not only is it protected and we are able to get these signatures in a timely manner, it also timestamps when it was sent to the parent, when it was viewed by the parent, when the parent decided to sign it, when they received the final PDF. So we're able to see and follow the signature of this document that is a legally binding document. And these meetings, again, I know this was a big conversational piece. If you have questions about those virtual meetings, we are happy to answer those. We wanted to give some time later, but it can be done. And our parents, we've only, in the 6 years that I've been with Georgia Connections Academy, we've had 3 in-person meetings. The parents have caught on very quickly with the virtual meetings, and they appreciate them. We can really work with their schedule and our teachers, and that goes back to the importance of having that schedule set for your teachers and giving them that time to plan and hold these meetings that are required. Okay, so this is, we actually provide virtual speech and OT. Our continuum of services, all related services start virtual. So we want, when we share this, there's a YouTube channel, and there is also another one, a webinar that's going to be created on providing that virtual OT. And virtual speech is the next slide. And one thing to note is, again, this is face-to-face. Again, I can't speak for your district, but we provide the mics, we provide the webcams to our students. Our SLPs are using whiteboards, different internet educational sites. There's even ones that do the talking for the student, where they press on their screen. We have different pieces of assistive technology we send to the students. Again, that Tools for Life. You can borrow equipment. We just actually ordered some for one of our students who is nonverbal. And you can provide speech individually and in a group setting. Now, we did have students, I'm going to make a note of this, that we're receiving face-to-face. Following Zelfine's guidance, we sent out communication to our face-to-face providers, and this is similar to brick and mortar. Your kids were used to going to see their speech person in person, OT, PT, whatever service they were receiving. So we reached out to our face-to-face contracted providers and said, are you prepared to provide virtual in this time? If not, we can shift. You know, you have those three options where we either shift from face-to-face to virtual. The parent waives the right to receive those services, and or they waive the right and say we would like to have compensatory services at a later time. So we have made that clear communication not only with our providers but our families, and we sent out information, and we sent out the the guidance from the USDOE, from the Georgia DOE, OSEP, just documenting these are the options, and then we follow up with the PWN. It's very important when you're in this virtual environment, and anytime, provide that communication, provide those PWN documents, and really just as you're getting it, I always tell my staff, I want to be transparent. I'm going to provide you with the information as I receive it. Same with my families. And then we put a plan in place. So we send that communication out, and we allow time for that feedback and follow up with a PWN. So we went through this very fast. I hope it was helpful, but we did want to leave sometimes, and it's 4 minutes, but it is time for you to answer questions. This document says, please complete this form. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you I'm going to add a link in the chat pod. And this is a form that you can fill out, and it asks us, hey, I'd love to see the form that you send out to families that documents your options from moving from face-to-face to virtual. Or I'd love to see that document you put together with all the resources from the CEC. Fill that out. We'll provide you with anything you like. Or if you have questions, we're open to answer those right now as well.
So if you have a question and you want to either unmute yourself or ask it in the chat box, just type it into the chat box, and I'm happy to unmute anybody who has a question. We've got a couple minutes left. And I hope that this was helpful. Thank you so much, Maria and Sabina. I know that we had to move quickly, but this was incredibly helpful for me, and I know that the schools have learned a lot from your expertise. So thank you for doing this. For those who are still here with us, we are doing another one of these on tomorrow at 1 p.m. with Georgia Cyber Academy, which is our other online school that the commission authorizes. So, and I see Angela is on here. Thank you, Angela, for making your team available, and the focus of that one will be compliance and early intervention programs. But you know, y'all have both been doing this for a long time and do it well, and so there's probably some other tips and tricks beyond compliance and EIP that they can address too. So I thank you guys all for being available. I don't see any questions coming through, but we've got a few more minutes, so I'm fine to hang out and look for any questions. If anybody wants to type anything into the chat box, but this session has been recorded and we will post it on our website and share it out, and we can share the presentation too. Y'all are comfortable with us doing that, and it'll be on our website. If you go to the State Charter Schools Commission website, we have a COVID guidance page right there on the homepage. It's very easily accessible, and we'll post it there. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions come through. Thank you, everybody, for joining, though. This was awesome. It's very impressive. I know that, you know, this is not the situation that any of us wanted to find ourselves in, but it's just really impressive how quickly everybody is adapting and ensuring that they still have those touch points with students, and that students continue learning, even though, you know, it's not in the face-to-face way that they had been doing, but we're all adapting as quickly as we can. Okay, well, I will end it if there are no questions. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, everyone who joined, and thank you again, Sabina and Maria. And I hope that the rest of you will join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. with Georgia Cyber Academy.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.